One of my proudest accomplishments reflecting back on this year was when my friend Hannah and I created a Udemy course on life experience design, designing for your ideal life in 6 weeks. And the reason this is one of the proudest accomplishments for me is that throughout life and the past 10, 11 years or so, what I've come to realize is once you have clarity on the kind of life you want and are understanding and accepting of your current situation, the path to getting where you want to go from point A to point B becomes so much clearer, and it truly gives you more purpose and more meaning for life. So that's what today's episode is about. Why I truly believe you can design for the life you want, and big picture, like quick tips on how you might be able to get there. So if you want to join me on this journey today, please do, and hear my own personal journey about how I started to design for my own life more intentionally. Hi, I'm Leah Federhoff, a user experience designer, writer, and life strategist, and I want to inspire you to thrive in work and life. Today's episode and topic is so near and dear to my heart, and before I became a designer, I didn't have the words for what it is that I was doing when I graduated in psychology, tried out nursing, tried out working as an undergrad, doing lab work, volunteering, so many different ways, and just dabbling in so many different things, basically experimenting until something stuck, until I found something that I was passionate enough about to pursue and to start being more intentional about my life's work. So the reason, right, is when you're in the messy middle of it, it feels like you're just trying anything and you seem multi-passionate, involved in this and that, but non-committal, right? And from the outside looking in to other people, it's like, why don't you just stick to something? Or why don't you just, pick something for your career and take up other hobbies, right? But you need to make a living, right? I heard it from my parents, from friends, just from societal pressure of trying, especially in your 20s, to find, the job that will be your job for the rest of your life, for job security, and just the next step after college, right? And I feel like, especially if you're a woman of color, an Asian woman, there is a lot of pressure to be a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, right? Get the job to security, and then you can do whatever else you want with your life. I know everyone's story is different, and on my Swishie podcast, if you go to anchor.fm/Swishie, you get to hear my interviews with other women who have gone through the same thing of redefining what success means. And for me, one of my first jobs out of college was in marketing communications. And it hit me one day when I was going through the monotony of hanging flyers up for the next event that we were trying to market in my department, where the fear and the thought struck me that this isn't what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And it was nothing crazy or out of the ordinary that triggered that thought. It was one of those passing thoughts, but this one stuck because I then got that awareness to ask, if this isn't what I want to be doing for the rest of my life, then what is? And that set me on a trajectory to find out. And I still stuck with that same job for 2 years, but I started taking night classes at the local community college in graphic design and art. I had started to do some webmaster work, or basically updating websites, learning some light coding, and then combining that with design. And it was something that I had started to look into. I also tried, drawing, illustration, photography classes, print, like all of these things. But web really spoke to me. And I think it was also learning about myself that I liked seeing my creations come to life. I like to see a project end or, being able to share that with a lot of other people, which the internet, like updating websites allowed me to do. And it also tapped into that creativity with the graphic design and the design process. So that led to me hearing about someone, one of a guest lecturers in one of the classes I was taking, talk about user experience design. And then that was one of those things where, I started gaining the confidence that, that could be a career. It bridges what I enjoy about psychology with what I enjoy about, web design and completing projects. And it was something that I decided to pursue for a master's. But in the messy middle of that, right, like I was living in San Francisco, which is, not the cheapest city in the world to live in, especially working at a university. There was a lot of other things going on at the time. And one of those things is still, I was relying on my parents a lot for some financial support and also to get their permission or approval for many things. And I remember it when I called them and said, I can't do this job anymore. I want to get my master's in web design and new media, right? And I built it up because all my life I was used to requesting that approval, needing that, okay to do something. And I had, braced myself for weeks to have this conversation, and I had no idea how they were going to take it. And I remember on one of the drives home from work when I was making this call, my mom basically said, okay, if that doesn't make you happy, it makes sense for you to go ahead and try something else. That was the second piece of that clicked for me, was that, okay, they're cool with it. Like, I'm the only one holding myself back, right? And honestly, if they weren't, like it shouldn't matter. Like I would be able to carve my own path or pursue my own life and those goals, right? It did make it easier though. And once again, in addition to the awareness, what is it I want to be doing with my life? I now had that, green light to say, okay, then let's do it and see what I can create out of this life. From past episodes, this was actually around the same time, right, that I was leaving a toxic relationship, that, like in those months following, I ended up losing my dad, made the big decision to move closer to family, and I still commuted to my master's classes. I did a hybrid where I took some online classes and then took the Caltrain, which was this train that went from like Santa Clara to San Francisco regularly, so I could take night classes there. And day classes because, at that time I also decided to leave what was a full-time job down to a part-time job to just, not working in the city anymore once I moved away. My family helped me, like my brother gave me really cheap rent in his townhome. So, I could live and study and, finish my program. But it was a series of events where I felt like I had the time, the space, and really nothing else holding me back to break down all those things that had made my life at one point, from the city I lived in to the relationship to my job title. And I got to rebuild that more intentionally. And this is so important, right? Because sometimes you have to hit rock bottom, or you have to hit a point where you're like, I'm not going to take this anymore. I want to live the life I want. And it happens to us at different times. And it happens to us multiple times. I've done the same stripping down and rebuilding probably 2 or 3 times now, very intentionally. A few years after that, I left a toxic job with no other job for me to, fall into. And this is where I started concepting about life experience design and the topic I'm about to share with you today. But I share all this with you once again to reiterate, right, that life is a journey and it's an iterative process. Like you can continue building, refining, scrapping things that don't work and adding more that does. And that's like the big picture. Like if you get anything about the meta level of what does it mean to do life experience design or to design intentionally for your life, it's to become aware of and start to experience this idea of trying things out, seeing what sticks, removing what doesn't, and then using that new foundation as a place to build even more things. And then deciding if those will stay or not, and to continue doing that until you refine your life to a point that you wake up every morning with more blessings, more energy, more, things that fill your day with joy than the opposite. So that's the practice, right? That's the life practice to cultivate, is to have that awareness to move towards what feels more aligning, and then to move away from what doesn't, or to push through what doesn't, and cultivate that, right? That creative confidence of how you want to move about your life. So that's the big picture. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and share with friends.